So welcome, folks. We're doing a quick talk on using the activity score in the Reo.Dev for your GTM. Uh, a quick round of introductions. I am Aditya. I lead product marketing here at Reo.Dev. Been here for about 3 months, so still in the process of ramping up to a certain extent, considering the speed that we release features. I'm a multiple-time developer marketer myself, and was most recently VP marketing at ImageKit. So I have directly felt the pain that we're trying to solve at Rio. And yeah, with me we have Mariam, who is also part of the product marketing team. Hi, Mariam.
Hey everyone, hi.
Great. It's a fairly informal talk. It's just a few of us and just enough for a coffee table, really. And so, housekeeping items, anytime you have a question, anything doesn't make sense, feel free to unmute yourself button and ask me questions. Happy to take them. Or you can drop them into the chat box and we'll pick them up after we finish the presentation. If there are anything that comes up to you later, feel free to Slack us, either of us directly on Slack or put it in your team Slack channel, and either myself or Mariam or one of our customer success reps should be able to help you with this. If there are any questions which require any further action, we'll come back to you and probably follow up with that over email in case there's something that we need to get internal clarification before we come back. Yep. So what are we talking about today? Today we're talking about the activity score, which is a fairly recent, it's been around for a while actually on Reo.Dev, but we had a fairly recent update to the activity score, and we've released the ability to put custom weights to the scores so that the AI model underneath uh, understands what is priority for you, what sources are priority for you, and what to relatively take with less regard. So we'll talk about why to use, when and how to use custom activity scores. I'll also do a demo on how to change the custom activity scores, and then I'll get into some consideration to get the most out of it into your out of the activity score for your GTM, because obviously this has cascading impact across the entire GTM pipeline and how prospects and deals flow right up to revenue, right? So I'll get into how to kind of think about using something like this uh, as effectively as possible. Yep. So what is the activity score? The activity score is a score that operates on two levels. It's an AI generated metric, which is considered almost like an engagement health check for every developer engaging with your product. And it is a kind of sum total number of all their activities across a product, across all the different sources that you're tracking. So if you're tracking GitHub and product and documentation, the score is a aggregation of all that activity at an individual level for developers. And then at an account level, there is an account activity score, which is a measurement of developer engagement across all the identified developers for that organization. So that gives you a holistic view of activity at an account level as well, right? The score is always on a 0 to 100 scale. Uh, we use a 0 to 20 for low, medium is 21 to 60, and then high is 60 to 100. And the score is real time, right? So if you're looking at a score today for a particular account, if it's 60 and it goes to 100 over a week, that's literally happened right now. And that's a measure of real time activity on the account. All right. And what does high, medium, low really mean in uh, real terms? For developers, a high is probably a developer who's definitely trying to build something with the product because they're really engaging across multiple touch points at a very high frequency and intensity. So they may also be advocacy ready because if they've reached that point, they've also been using it well and there is some degree of affinity with the product. So they may be ready to, they definitely have a point of view on your product, right? At a medium, they are there, they are engaging. It's not casual engagement, and they're probably experimenting with small apps and POCs, but they're still not at the highest level that which would probably have been seen relative to others. Low engagement is just probably getting started or initial curiosity and uh, not much that you can conclude from as far as interest or intent from a low activity level for a developer. For accounts, high activity is generally a broad spectrum engagement from multiple developers. Many of them are being are highly engaged, which is what will drive account activity to be high, right? And that is probably indicative at an account level that they're looking to solve for a particular use case, right? Like it's unlikely that an account has multiple developers, all of them active across multiple touch points in recent time, unless there's a clear and present use case that they want to solve for, right? And of all the accounts that you have uh, across the spectrum, the high activity levels logically would be the most likely to engage with sales because they have some degree of clarity on how they want to use your product and how they want to and what they want to solve for, right? Moderate engagement probably are accounts which are getting to that point. They'll need some nurturing. They may not be ready for an active sales conversation yet, but they're getting there, right? And low is going to be a case of either it's few developers or case developers who are engaging deeply, which is probably personal interest, or it's a bunch of developers, but everyone's just superficially engaging with the product. So not yet ready to uh, they probably not defined the problem or defined how they want to use your product, so they're probably not ready to engage with sales. But that's obviously you would layer on the actual activity scores, actual activity that's going on, all the other filters as well. But just look at the activity score itself. There's quite a lot which can be uh, gathered from this, right? What activities feed into the developer score? So at the developer level, it is a bunch of signals. We track everything in GitHub. We track documentation. We track website pages if you're tracking any of those. We track product usage like logins and key pages within the product. Forms and code interaction. So if someone has done a code copy from, say, your API sandbox or has uh, filled a form to sign up with the product, we would track all that. Community mentions, keywords on the community, your own forums like Slack or even say public forums as well, right? And at an account level, there's an aggregation basically of all the activities at a developer level plus the count of the developers itself, right? So all things being equal, 2 developers versus 10 developers naturally going to get a higher activity score at an account level, right? All these are just the sources, and the AI, of course, also looks at the depth of engagement, the intensity of it. That is, how many pages, for example, on documentation, or how many comments have come in on GitHub, things like that. It looks at the frequency, so how often have pages been viewed on documentation, or how many logins have happened, how frequently logins have happened, as well as recency, right? So obviously more points if someone has logged into the product today versus say a month ago. And yeah, there's another filter which we have in the product in Reo.Dev, which is the activity search, which literally shows which accounts have gotten a rapid increase in their activity score in recent time. So that's always a great way to look at your accounts is first filter for high score, and then look at those who have searched. So those are the accounts which have gone high and they've done it right now. So there's a very rapid recent increase in interest from those accounts, right? And what we have released now is the custom activity score. What this does is, just going back 2 screens, is it allows you to set the weightage for the individual sources within each of these 6 activity sources. And what that does is it tells the AI what to take more, consider more important and what to consider less important. Obviously, if you set a score to 0, it tells the AI to disregard that source altogether. And if you put it to 10, then it is a relative maximum uh, across all the sources that it's looking at, right? And the way to use this is basically use it in 2 ways. Give higher weightage for activities that indicate higher buying intent versus just interest, and weight filter out activities that may generate a lot of signals but don't necessarily lead to buying intent. So for example, if reading documentation is a high intent signal for you, then definitely give that a high score. Uh, but if say community activity does not necessarily mean that someone's interested in to buy, you can give that a lower score. What that means is the AI will then say that, okay, I need to take documentation, give documentation more weightage for when I build out my final activity score, and community less weightage when I build out the final activity score. The goal here is to improve your pipeline. So if you want to weight your pipeline and say, okay, I want enterprise accounts, for example, which are uh, who will spend more time reading documentation or looking at my pricing page or reading my enterprise landing pages, and will spend less time on community where I'll get a lot of individual developers or SMB accounts who will come in, then that's a classic kind of situation where you then weighted saying that let me give more weightage to enterprise signals and less weightage to individual and SMB signals, right? The last point here is that any changes takes about 24 hours to propagate across your account because it'll have to be recalculated for every single developer and then again recalculated for every single account as a roll-up. So it will take a little time, but once that happens, it'll be present across the entire account, right? Obviously any changes that you're making happen at the developer activity score, but naturally as a roll-up, it also affects the account activity score, right? And some real world use cases for this are, like I said, if you are tracking, say, multiple repos on GitHub, say, tracking a couple of your own repositories, a couple of competitor repositories, and say a couple of big open source repositories, which are, say, foundational to your category, then uh, you want that for Intel, you want that to, help marketing, help developer relations, but you don't want scoring from very high activity on, say, complementary repos or major open source repos to affect your activity score, because that those repos will obviously generate a lot of activity. So then you can score those down and keep the score for your own repos high, because that's actually showing real interest in your own product versus category or uh, halo effect interest, right? Uh, Another good case, especially for PLG products, is if you have a direct self-serve motion and you'll get a lot of logins, but you want to kind of scale weight that down in favor of actual in product engagement. So then you will give less weight to people who are just logging in but haven't really progressed with using the product, in favor of people who are not just logging in but also using the product with depth, right? So then those multiple logins that don't really lead to any product usage don't uh, overweight so much in your final activity score, right? And like the previous example I was giving, that's another one where if you want to wait for enterprise signals versus community, or you want to wait for SMB versus enterprise, or any particular subsegment like that, which manifests a different behavior in product interactions, that's another great way to use uh, the weights in custom activity score. Yeah. I'll pause here. I'm going to get into the demo. But before that, folks, any questions? Happy to take them. Okay. I'll get right back into it and through the demo then. So if you can see my screen, I'm already logged into an account. This is a test account, so I'm not going to have like really perfect data. So I will put that as a caveat. But right off the bat, you can see that when you look at your accounts, you have the activity score here. An easy way to start with this is just sort by activity score. So you see your highest first. And this is the surge as well that I was talking about. Um, where did it go? Yeah, here, the activity trend is the surge, right? So you can also add a filter and filter for surge, which is accounts which have shown a rapid increase in recent time, right? Now, let's see how to actually change the activity scores itself. I go to settings, I will go to configurations, I'll go to activity score, and let's configure the model, right? So as I mentioned, there are 6 different source categories. There's GitHub, documentation, product, website, forms and code interaction, and community. And each of these has multiple things that can be scored, right? So within GitHub, there's your own repositories, competitor repositories, complementary repositories. So you can get into really deep detail on what you want to weight in and weight out. So going back to the previous example, what I was saying about if I want to track all this, but I only want to score based on my own repository because that's what is indicated to me of actual buying interest, I could just zero these out. This does not affect any of the tracking. We're still going to track all the signals. You will be able to see everything in the activity timeline. It's just not going to affect the activity score itself, right? And yes, one thing which I missed is before you change any uh, scores, what I would definitely recommend is generate a preview. Right. So, like I'm saying, generate a preview. This takes some time. So, I have that pre-generated from just before this call. So, you will get a kind of uh, preview like this. Uh, Ideally, it should be a normal distribution. And if you make a lot of changes, this will obviously change dramatically. So, it's always a good idea to take a snapshot of the preview before you start, make your changes, and then see how significant an impact you made on the score distribution. Ideally, you should be aiming for a normal distribution, whatever the changes you make, right? You don't want your scores skewed dramatically high or skewed dramatically low, obviously. So that's one good check that you can do. But yes, getting back into it. Going back to my previous example, if I want to track all multiple repositories, complementary, competitor, and owned, but I only want to score my own repositories. I can just set these to zero, and yeah, we'd be good to go after that, right? I won't actually save it now because this is a account that the entire team uses. But having done that, if you want to roll it back, what you can also do is just deploy the default model, and that will go back to the scores that it had at the beginning, right? And another example that I can think of is, say, over here, in case you want to reduce the weightage for logins in case people log in quite frequently, but a lot of those logins may be new users, free users who don't deeply engage with the product yet, then you can give that like a really low score. So it'll still be counted, it'll still contribute to the activity score, but not as much as, say, compared to say crucial screens within the product, which I'll say, okay, the more screens that I'm tracking, I want to give these a really high weightage. So then what will happen is that developers who are logging in but doing nothing else will get a lower score than they were, say, before this change. But developers who are logging in and reaching a particular milestone screen will get a higher score than what they were doing before this, right? So you can do this across all the different sources and then save and deploy this once and for all. And once you do that, it takes about 24 hours to uh, for the changes to be affected on the product. Yep. And I won't make the changes because, yeah, that will change a lot of stuff for the team. But yeah, that's basically the demo. Again, I'll pause in case there are any questions. And if not, I'll get into some uh, high level strategic considerations to get the best out of using custom activity scores. Custom activity scores, just some things which to keep in mind is when you're making the changes, I would suggest always have a clear goal of what you want to change in your pipeline before making that so that you know what to look for and whether that changes in the activity score have created the desired result for you from a type pipeline perspective, right? So one way to think about this is define a hypothesis that you want, which is, say, for example, like enterprise accounts are underrepresented our pipeline. So that's your uh, issue that you want to solve for. That's a problem that you want to solve for because they generate less community traffic. So community is more biased towards individual developers and not enterprise accounts. They have other ways of uh, evaluating it and don't really go on forums. And that's a way to boil down your pipeline issue that enterprise you want more enterprise accounts into a signal manifestation, right? The implication of that of enterprise account representation is they don't get on communities as much, right? So therefore, what we would do is reduce scoring for communities and add increased scoring on key pages that enterprise accounts would look at, right? So that's an example hypothesis that I'd suggest define before you get into changing the scores, because then you can change the scores, see what happened to the scoring, see how that impacts your pipeline and the accounts that your team can reach out to, and how is that flowing across your deal pipeline, and whether that's actually being useful, right? A second consideration is give it some time because we all have a deal pipeline. No deals typically close in less than a month. If your enterprise is going to be even longer, so have some leading indicators like say what is the volume or the mix of MQLs or the mix of SQLs that I'm getting, but also do track how this is impacting finally on your closed won rates, your ECVs, your revenues. All that is obviously going to take some time. So if you're making substantive changes, it makes sense to do this, say, once, let the changes percolate right through the pipeline and see if that's really helping from a revenue perspective before going back and making substantive changes, right? A little tweaks here and there, of course, don't matter too much, but if you're, say, making sweeping changes across all the scoring, then give it some time to really see the impact right through the pipeline before you get back to the drawing board, right? And do document your baseline metrics. Your baseline pipeline metrics. I mean, like what is your MQL rate? What is your closed one? How much time it's taking? How many deals you're able to assign to reps on a weekly, monthly basis? All that stuff before making changes. So then, after the changes a month down the line, how much has this helped is a fairly easy thing to measure in that case, right? And yes, try and do one hypothesis at a time, right? We may want to stop tracking competitor GitHub and increase the indexation for, increase the weightage for uh, enterprise landing pages and reduce the weightage for simple product logins which don't go deep into the product. But if you do all those changes at once, it's obviously hard to figure out what caused what change in your pipeline, right? So it's probably easier to do one thing. Let's see what the changes are, see what the impact is across your entire GTM motion, then get into the next change, do that, check the impact, and then consequently keep going forward. The one exception here, I would say, is if you're switching off an activity that is basically setting a score to zero, uh, you can do that pretty much at any time. That's not going because that you'll see the impact of that fairly quickly in the activity score, right? That's pretty much all I had, um, and right on 30 minutes. So a quick summary of what we talked about. We talked about activity scores, which is a AI-powered roll-up score of all the activity that a developer does. And then the account score is a roll-up of that at an account level. It's on 0 to 100, and 60 plus is generally what we quote unquote call high, right? Which is on the highest end of the spectrum and most likely an account ready for a sales conversation, right? Why to change the scores or why to change the weightage is to align the way the model is scoring and weighting different signals with what aligns with buying intent for your particular product, right? And how often to do it, I probably like once a quarter or say maybe at max once a month, so you can see the impact across your entire sales cycle and how that's impacting everything, right? And change one signal group or one hypothesis at a time. Use the preview feature also to see if the changes you made have really skewed the distribution either very left or very right. Then it's probably uh, there's a degree of nuance there that any signal with very high volume, like say if you're a almost a public uh, get a lot of traffic, then obviously website pages or documentation will have very high volume. So then changes there can have a very big impact on the scoring because the absolute volumes underlying that are high, right? And getting success is really a factor of having a clear hypothesis, making a conservative change, seeing what that impact is, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, right? And yeah, that's it. So yeah, at this point, it's over to you guys. Go back, look at your pipeline, see how you can get, if there's something you want to change, what kind of accounts are flowing through and what kind of accounts are being surfaced or highlighted. Uh, Develop a hypothesis, plan how you want to measure it. What is your leading, and especially what's your leading indicator? What's a good metric that you can track, say a week or 2 weeks after the change that tells you that yes, this did work. This has changed things for the better, at least to start with, and fingers crossed all the way down the pipeline. And then implement, right? Implementation is, yeah, you need admin access. You go to configure, preview all your changes, and then deploy it. right? And then just make sure you schedule a follow up to see what the changes are.